And this workshop represents a kind of culmination, I think, of a few of our ideas, bordering then on what's now been called and written about and published on the sensing city, or the whole idea of the sensing environment, which is key to, I think, understanding, obviously now, with phones but understanding the environment that you're in, and how the city is changing and what impact it actually has on us as human beings. So that's kind of the central idea. David teaches in digital media, and I teach in computing. I'm really interested in sort of the social philosophies of computers and digital use of digital culture. So I'm really doing projects now around digital inclusion myself. The whole idea of digital inclusion, which is like a deep philosophy in San Francisco and probably Oakland too. And David teaches, and he's very interested in games. He teaches a game course that's his CCSF. And we just have for a long time, you'll see a piece of our film from 2004 where we set ourselves up. Long before really the ubiquity of the smartphone, we set ourselves up as a micro broadcasting center with a miniature camera, and you'll see a piece of that film. So that's who we are, and if you have more questions, you can ask us. We worked partly in Australia when we were living over there, and we've come back to San Francisco to work here. It's a longer story, but I could go into it, but I'm not going to give you my whole dissertation. What we're really interested in a lot now, or this workshop is, we're going to be talking about these two ideas, surveillance and sousveillance. And the sousveillance, we'll explain in greater depth, but it comes from someone we both very much admire, Professor Steve Mann, who's really arguably he's a scientist, artist, who kind of preconceived a lot of issues around the wireless environment long before the arrival of the smartphone. And he literally was hooking up wireless antennas when he was at MIT, long before there were any wireless antennas pitched on any buildings in the world. He had it fixed sus, and he's a brilliant, brilliant man. And he came up with this term, sousveillance. He's very critical of the surveillance apparatus, which is built into the city. And that's one of the things we're going to be dealing with in this workshop, is the built form of the surveillance apparatus. So anyway, the two handouts that I gave you, this has just our poster on the front, and then we'll talk about these are the game pieces that are in that board. And then there's, on the back of that, a little rundown of today's activities, so if you get lost in where we're at, this is a list. There's some details you're going to need, Wi-Fi passwords and stuff like that. Here is some URLs and addresses. Then we have described our game that we're going to try, the lens drift game. I hope you're not afraid of wet weather. The lens drift game, and that game is going to be played out in Oscar Grant Plaza. Notice the maps online still call it Ogawa Plaza. As I understand, it's been reclaimed as Oscar Grant Plaza. And we'll talk about that map in greater detail on the screen. This is kind of for you to take home afterwards and have. On the back, there are related links, and you can look things up. So it's a bit of research on all of the different topics we're going to be talking about today. The other handout is actually the rules for that game over there, which was invented by Guy Debord, the major situationist theorist, thinker. He invented this game, which he called the greatest achievement of his life, was to actually have produced a game that mimics perfectly the rules of war. And it's based on a particular battle that David can tell you more about, and the militarist von Clausewitz's work on war. And he was a military strategist. So Debord based the whole game around a singular battle in the 18th century that Napoleon fought. And I have lovingly crafted that game this past week. But anyway, so it's probably one of the few that actually exists in the United States. I don't think there are a lot of people into the game of war in this country. So now we actually have this very special game of having created that. It's really what the game represents. It's a microcosm, but it represents, an essential battlefield where there can be conflict, and it's, Debord conceived of it as kind of a representation for class war as well as traditional militarism. David can tell you more about that. I mean, we'll get into that more. David, did you want to introduce yourself in any other ways?
No, that's right. I'm an instructor, writer, filmmaker. I work with Molly on projects like this one. I've been teaching gaming at City College, gaming subjects at City College in San Francisco for about 10 years now. And had a great interest, particularly in the game ideas for the situationists, and have done for at least 25, 30 years. And I'm excited to be part of today and welcome you here. And would like to, as the afternoon unfolds, draw your attention to the significance of the Plaza out there and its recent role in the conflicts to do with the city of Oakland and the clashes between the police union and the police forces and the, I guess the business interests of the city council versus the population and their concerns. And the fact that this is a continuum, and we should also honor the fact that we're on native land, and and the struggles that go on in this area have gone on for many, many years and decades. And the struggles that we're talking about are a continuum. They're not anything new, and will probably continue for some time yet. So any discussions we have about conflict are very much are about a continuum.
Right, and the contestation over public space in particular.
Right.
So that's kind of really the essence of the Archimedia, as well as David and I've always worked around issues involving public space. And in our film on urban technology is like the science of the street. So both of us are very interested in the signs and the kinds of presentation of the street and activities that take place in the street and so forth.
So should we?
We're gonna start with some films, and the first one is a film by Banksy, the graffiti artist who's so famous. But it's a silent film, and we're just gonna try to get you to sort of start thinking about surveillance and the role that it plays in your life and how it affects you, how you see it, just by watching some different films. This is a silent film, so.
It's a silent.
Yeah.
The next sequence we've got here is from a movie called Conversation, which was made in 1974 by Francis Coppola. And at the time, the lens used in this film was brand new. It depicts a very slow zoom from the top of the tallest building in Union Square in San Francisco. And the premise of the film is that a couple are walking around Union Square, and their conversation is being recorded by a professional eavesdropper. And again, it's a team of different people whose job it is to record this conversation using different techniques. Different microphones placed in different, concealment systems. One's in a bag, another one's on looks like a rifle, and it's highly directional. Another one is carried by a guy wrapped up in a newspaper. And the character played by Gene Hackman later will take all the tapes recorded by all the different resources and bring them together into one coherent recording using his own custom equipment. So this first scene shows the conversation unfolding and introduces the fact that the conversation is difficult to record. It's a very difficult job because they're moving, there's a lot of extraneous noise, you know, it's a difficult job for the
sounders, but also just the presence of recording coming into modern life. The fact that you think you're in a space where no one can hear you, and there's so many recording devices that are in everyday life. So it's, and also it's so similar actually to the Ogawa Plaza in the sense of being a very contained urban space that's bordered by several tall buildings on all sides.
As a director, Coppola was fascinated by surveillance and used to, you know, secretly record his parents as a child, things like that. And was also interested in relationships between, you know, recording as a kind of undercover official job and also in the entertainment business because you have to record in order to make a film. And his sound recorders, Wolf Merch, you know, made the connection very clearly in this sequence. So the formal requirements of being a spy, as it were, and the formal requirements of being a filmmaker perfectly overlap.
And the couple are actually plotting, they're having an affair, they're plotting something.
It turns out, well, we won't spoil it.
Yeah, we won't spoil it for you. But they've gone into public space, let's say, deliberately to try to disguise their conversation. They're leaning on the slide, trying to fit into a crowd, which only makes the issue of recording more interesting from a standpoint of ubiquitous recording devices.
We know nothing about the couple at the beginning of the film, except that gradually we realise they're being recorded.
Right.
It doesn't, we don't even know that he's not shooting.
It's hard to distinguish who's on the sound team from who's in the crowd.
Right. So, what's great about this film is the rise in 1974 before Watergate. And Watergate, as you know, was an event that brought Nixon to his knees, and it was all because of a recording.
Let them just hear now, because the voices of the couple become distinguishable out of the rest of the cacophony of the crowd. And also bear in mind, this is 1974, so the equipment that you're looking at is probably state-of-the-art, because he's a professional sound guy
Yeah.
for the time, but it's really super old school by comparison to now.
Yeah.
Although the meetings really aren't like the band and the high altitude sonar, that's still all part of what goes on, you know? Right? You're saying, did they use that before? Right. Hi, funny. We're just showing, I'm just showing some films, so just, here you go.
This is the preface to a hands-on exercise.
Yeah, I'm Wally and this is David, and we're gonna.
All of this leads to a hands-on game activity, so there's meaning to all of this, which will become clearer later,
Here, you can see.
involving sound, public space, and everything else. That's the context of what we're looking at.
Yeah, we're just talking about this film called The Conversation, which is all about audio surveillance.
But he can't hear what they're saying right now, so he uses a magical device that doesn't exist, but he plugs it in and suddenly he can hear what they're saying. They could kind of do this now. They did it for the Beatles. They were able to isolate just the Beatles in an old recording of New York, but it's only recently that we know about it. This was kind of science fiction until like this year.
This was the Walter Burge's dream.
Yeah, isolating just one
Drop all of the wizard.
beat.
Kill us if you got the chance.
So suddenly the story changes because he's now using his technology. He's been able to isolate a phrase which steers the story into a new direction, and he's a profoundly religious man, and he's a deep Catholic. You know, the weight and the gravity of the guilt of being associated with potential murder is really what the rest of the film is about at this moment. So, should we talk about shooting back now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a little film that Steve Zahn, I mentioned before, the artist scientist that we're so in admiration of, performed with his students when he was, I think he was at MIT. In order to prove the presence of the surveillance apparatus, and this was from when, 1989?
1995.
95. To sort of draw focus on the surveillance apparatus, they went into a Sears and Roebuck with a film camera. And that was enough. And
A big film camera?
not a big one, no. And so you see what happens in the response to him. I don't know if you've ever tried this yourself in places. Nowadays, everyone has a camera, so it's not so prevalent. In fact, you can walk around Safeway with your camera and looking up coupons, your phone camera. But in the 90s, the idea of privacy and the one-way kind of surveillance was much more prevalent because there were fewer cameras, and so Steve's work there were 3 decades has been around critique of surveillance, essentially. He's the major person who invented wearable technology. But anyway, so they walk into a Sears and they challenge we're not doing a workshop on wearables here.
But I'm just trying to draw attention to his apparatus.
Yeah, he's made like 35 different wearable helmets. He started doing it when he was 15 and proceeded out of his garage into becoming the top scientist in the field. But and so this is him wearing the actual sunglasses that allow him to be online and be present in space at the same time without looking like he's carrying a laptop or a wireless. It's actually in his glasses. That's what he's trying to perfect. But can we show shooting back, because I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So he takes his students in there, and you just see the effect of this is to show how deeply embedded one-way surveillance is into the architecture of department stores, buildings, private space, property, et cetera, and our culture arguably is becoming, once again, been more in this way, but has in the last 15 years with the concept of home invasion and other mediated concepts about danger in the inner city and all this stuff, which isn't not dangerous, and it's not true that there's crime, but this propulsion forward to having home surveillance is really a big thing. But here's an apartment, so just watch what happens when we talk about that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what are those things up on the ceiling?
That's just the AC system.
Pretty live.
Oh, yeah, those hemispheres?
He doesn't know. He doesn't know.
On the ceiling?
Yeah.
It's what's it, what do you mean by AC?
They just the temperature.
Oh, yeah, what about temperature sensors? Oh, yeah. For air conditioning or heating? What he did, thing up on the ceiling is, is it some kind of camera maybe?
I'm sure I didn't answer your question. I do not know.
Not sure what it is. Is there somebody who might know what it is?
Security people want to get out here as fast as possible. Some type of security people.
Oh, yeah, so there's something to do with security.
I don't know, sir. I'm trying to put words in my mouth.
It's being filmed.
Yeah, I was just wondering what that thing up on the ceiling is.
Those are cameras from security watching people.
Oh, yeah. Don't you find any customers feel uncomfortable?
Actually, probably make most people feel comfortable.
Make people feel safe.
Why is that?
Because they're watching over you, somebody's next to you with a gun or stealing, you'll know it. That's not protect you.
Yeah, but there might be some people who are camera shy or
Unfortunately, the world that we live in today, you can't trust everybody. By them having security and stopping crime and criminals and stealing, it keeps the prices down.
yeah. So it's a matter of difficult to trust people, I guess. in this.
That's the world we live in. It's unfortunate, but
Yeah. Yeah. It says like the story you can trust. But yet it's sort of just, isn't it ironic that there's a sort of mutual trust?
It's not how the world is.
unless we got presidents and first ladies, we can put out.
Yeah. I guess anyone can be a criminal.
Someone calls on you.
You don't think that cameras are going to make people feel uncomfortable?
So so obviously, the issue of safety is one of the major drivers of placing these devices into public space, right? And safety, and I have to admit, when I'm in a parking garage late at night, it's nice to know there's a video camera there, and there are crimes that have been stopped, even criminals who've been found because of ATM machine cameras and all that. But nevertheless, like, obviously you see the chief, he's showing. He's presenting the notion of what we trust, because I think it's actually you need to make people aware that they're being videotaped if you're doing it. It's pretty much against the law to do it without letting someone know.
Steve has gone on to write extensively about the idea of veillance, which is essentially a neutral.
Right. We're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Veillance.
So we've come back to veillance when we do the lens strip, but
So the next film we're going to show is surveillance camera players. They're a group that worked in the 90s in New York City. Well, they started early. They started in about 1984. Good year for surveillance literature. And then they spread. I don't know if you're familiar with their work, but for those of you who aren't, they spread rapidly on the internet because what they did was they went out and performed in front of surveillance cameras. And they did tours of New York City, pointing out where all the cameras were like in a given zone. So they would actually set up these free public tours to go look for cameras, which is kind of a little bit what we're going to do today. But at any rate, Bill Brown was the main guy, and because the means for doing this were like ubiquitous, they could just put it out on the net, and other people became surveillance camera players, and their art project just proliferated in a really ingenious way. It was very admirable work and very funny, and they eventually had people knocking on their door going, "What are you people doing?" Because they did it so much that they actually were being recorded performing, and then it was like, what was such a strange activity for those behind the cameras watching the CCTV monitors, that he was kind of, he was targeted and questioned about their activities. Because he broke this kind of seamless, unspoken barrier between
Like
the
Steve
public
Mann.
and private.
Steve Mann broke the magic
Barrier.
unspoken rule that you don't question the
authority of the trust.
rationale behind the surveillance membrane.
My name is Bill Brown. I'm a co-founder and the current director of the Surveillance Camera Players. We're sitting in the very center of Times Square, Duffy Square. In 10 minutes, we'll be crossing over the street and giving a live performance into one of 6 webcams that earthcam.com maintains here in Times Square.
Essentially, you feel that surveillance cameras violate our right to privacy, also our right to freedom of assembly, and they also go on the presumption that everyone's guilty because everyone's being watched. So that's kind of what the basis of the surveillance camera players. We just want to get a dialogue between the community. At least get people to think about the cameras, know that they're there, and make an informed decision about whether how they feel about that. So those people walk around, they don't even know they're around. So.
Totally against, video surveillance on the internet. It's not right. We have to get privacy.
I think it's more of a concern because if you're using your adaptive media, it's almost, it's not invading your life as much because you just are comfortable with that sort of, media. And I think that's when you need to worry, when you become complacent about, cameras and, everything like that. Then anything can happen.
Can we do that today?
You're going to become kind of like surveillance camera players today. Those are your pieces in the game.
Sorry, what year was that?
What year was that?
That was 84.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So they did this, pretty much through to the end of the 90s a lot before, and then, cameras are everywhere now. It's more likely to not see a camera than to see everyone standing in the crowd holding up their phones, taking a zillion pictures. And God knows what else recording. I mean, sometimes if you're on the bus and you're reading something, someone could be taking pictures of what you're reading, like it's or creepily recording you if you're talking about something. Anyway, so.
Okay, so this is something Molly and I made in 2001. 2001.
Yeah, it's actually about because we're really interested. I mean, we both came to each other even through an interest in situationism, which is why it's so delightful to be here today, being able to kind of revel in that. But we made this because we were really interested in the drift, the read, the idea of the drift, and we were trying to create a way to record the read. And this is really pre-smartphone.
Yeah, so before the smartphone, you had to build your own kit, basically. The inspiration came from Steve Mann to assemble a vest, a fishing vest, that had all the bits on it that would normally today be done with a smart device. So a camera, a video recording system, but also the ability to transmit across a range, right? So now you can do live streaming over the internet, that in, basically 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, you had to do with radio if you didn't want to spend a huge amount of money.
But I'd say right before the smartphone came out and other kind of more wearable stuff, there was an explosion of miniature cameras. And that's what we did, the world's smallest. It was hopped on the web as the world's smallest video camera.
So you could get all this gear all of a sudden at the beginning of the millennium. And I had a head-mounted display from the mid-90s, which was essentially sold to gamers, but also dentists, so they could distract their patients while they're pulling their teeth out. I actually bought it from a dentist, but VR is all Oculus Rift now, but 20 years ago it looked like this, and the resolution was much lower. but it meant that if you wore this, you could walk down the street and see what someone was sending you as you walk down the street. So it was a form of augmented reality.
And I'll just add to this, can you put it on the stuff, that we were a little bit being also quite playful and funny because at that time, you might remember, probably not the very, because you all young people grew up right with a cell phone and smartphone in your hand, but there was a time when artists were kind of carrying around, 10 or 12 things. This is my recording device, this is my camera. So we were kind of playing on that at the best to put it all in the pocket.
Was this post 9/11 or pre?
Well, we were doing this before 9/11, then 9/11 happened.
It happened right in the middle, and it actually kind of flipped us out because we were so concerned with these ideas, and then that happened. It was just kind of like, whoa, what are we doing?
It was at the very time of 9/11.
Right, it was either 2001, I think, right at the very time. I remember it being kind of jarring that we were working with these ideas and that happened at the same time.
We were part of a art show in Sydney where all of this was exhibited, along with the vest and everything else.
Right, at our stage.
But we had been invited to do that before 9/11. So we had all this planned, So
And also, partly why we invented it was because, again, when we say pre-smartphone, the reason I emphasize the smartphone is that now it's really easy to upload video to the web. But it wasn't when we made this. So what we were working on was actually a response more to, say, anti-globalization protests, where folks were getting their footage confiscated. So what we basically did was create a way that the person who was doing the shooting didn't have the footage on them. Someone else did, by separating those two things out. So if the police confiscated your camera, that your footage you shot was elsewhere. That was
this camera had a range of about 150 feet. So if you were filming cops beating someone up, someone else could record it.
Yeah.
So even if the cops got
arrested
you, the other guy had the footage.
Yeah, so we worked as a team and someone else received the footage and then they couldn't really take it from you. It was just
here.
Yeah, we were kind of kidding around.
No, I sort of remember these days. Yeah.
And indie media was the way, because in those days, the internet was thought of as a way to channel footage to bigger channels. So indie media would get your footage, you'd cut it, and then send it to Democracy Now.
It was after Seattle.
And Democracy Now would put it on the big media.
Right.
But I mean,
the Seattle, Whispered Media, they're friends of mine, and they were in Seattle, and they kind of, it was a combination of things, because there were the Australian artists who kind of helped them create the first indie media website at that Seattle uprising, and then Whispered Media was there, and they were taking the footage and putting it out on Deep Dish Network. So they basically not only recorded the protests, but broadcast the protests on cable in the United States, which was the first time ever that has happened, that on a daily basis a protest was actually broadcast. But at the same time, indie media started, and that was the hub of activity of all the footage coming in. So
Molly and I've always been interested in using low-tech. I've always been looking, I come from the culture channel world, which is all about using what you have, right? And the glitchy kind of interference was great. I love that kind of weird glitching out that you get. That's all part of the aesthetic, and the fact that people wander down the street and go on drifts and psychogeography, that was all part of it. And even today, lens drift, it's all about drifting, wandering, mapping, getting familiar with the city, and just generally contesting the official uses of space with technology that you have at your disposal.
So that was just another, and we've screened this a number of places. It's screened at other cinemas, screened in Australia. It was part of the Model Citizens show in Australia. So we had made a little backpack that we had in your gear. Like we really wanted to show how the TV, you become two people become like a little TV station essentially, and how that works. So
and now we're making wearable computers with Raspberry Pis and Pi Zeros, and just continuing with the wearable stuff. It's all part of the same narrative, really. To drift from situationist theory on the drift, to walk without purpose or function through the city, a technique practiced by the Situationist International, the area of debris, but nothingness.org. And that was in October 2001. But we
Yes, it really was. September 11th had just happened.
So timely.
Yeah, it was actually, I remember just being very struck by it because it was, the things we were looking at or thinking about, they were a little bit creepily into the global.
the global media events coalesced in a funny way that year because George Bush, he clearly was messing with global politics in a funny way, and the Saudis really wanted to do something funny that year, and did. And the world
And we had someone, we
Same
actually had someone say to us, believe it or not, I mean, you probably remember, maybe remembers 1998, 97, 98, when the WTO meeting in Seattle was actually stopped by protest. Direct action, that's what we were talking about when we're referring to the WTO. This famous Seattle protest, right? A real class war of protesters actually getting in the way of a global head leadership meeting, right? We actually had someone say to us that they thought in Australia, oh, 9/11, did that have something to do with Seattle? Like, it totally shocked us when she said that to us, because it was like,
For us,
these events were being put together by people in this huge way, you know.
For us, 9/11 meant the big protest that happened in Melbourne the year before. Because that was a huge victory for the protesters in Melbourne who contested a big arrival of, the World Trade Organization in Melbourne. So it was called S11.
S11. I mean, there had been, a lot of people overseas didn't want anyone to think that Seattle was the first. It wasn't. Jakarta 8 also challenged a major conference of the IMF and the WTO global financial leadership conferences. It was in Jakarta. Big protest. They didn't stop it from happening, however. The reason Seattle was so big, partly because it happened in the United States, but also because the United States made alternative media history because it was broadcast daily on cable television with a collaboration between Whispered Media, Indie Media, and Deep Dish Television Network, and Free Speech TV. But it was also a major collaboration between Australian activists and Seattle activists and some Dutch activists to create the first Indie Media website. And Indie Media was really important for about 5 years of time, right? They just proliferated. Every major city had an Indie Media location. Really big thing. So it was an international collaboration. But then they actually made the meeting stop, which was the purpose of the direct action. Was to put a halt.
Which gets to this topic.
So there was one in Melbourne too called S11, which was
the tactical and strategic methods used to prevent and disrupt large events are all part of the game of war. Tactical intervention, a thorough awareness and understanding of the terrain itself, both geographic and psychogeographic, and of course the importance of destruction of lines of communication, both on the side of the dominant forces and both on the side of the underwhelmed forces. And it's even spilling over into popular culture. I mean, I went to see Rogue One the other day in Star Wars, and that film could easily be about, that film is shockingly close to a manifesto on how to overthrow large state. If it wasn't made by Disney, well, the fact that it even is made by Disney makes it's like a blueprint on how to, the spirit of that film is quite interesting. Anyway,
does anyone have any comments about the films or questions or anything else you can, any comments just about surveillance or what it made you think of in your own world, or realize your neighbor has a camera trained under the nose, you've been wondering why, or I don't know. not trying to freak you out. It's not science fiction though, right? There's cameras everywhere.
Well, I'm curious as to this project that you did with, this isn't quite non-strict yet, but it was like the first prototype of like this kind of sousveillance system that you could just, it was very DIY, that you could, get all the parts yourself and then take out into the streets. And the purpose was just kind of like, I guess the purpose you're talking about right now, but it wasn't quite clear in the film to me, and maybe because we're talking about a number of different things.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess like that specific footage, what were you trying to capture there?
With the art, with the
Walking down the
urban
street?
technology and walking. Oh, when we were walking down the street.
Yeah.
We were pretty much testing out the apparatus on a little derive down the street where we live.
So like proof of concept.
Proof of concept.
Its
yeah.
effectiveness as a suitable means of remote recording in matters where a group were interested in engaging with an urban terrain.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know, you probably are aware, maybe we can show a piece of this at the end, of the film that BIT did called BIT Plane, where Natalie Jeremijenko, who's also a scientist, artist, and Kate made their own little, they have a little plane they put a video camera in. This is early 90s though, like this is, I think it's 96, mid-90s. And flew it over the 0-degree airspace over Silicon Valley.
Oh wow.
So they couldn't, the plane that they used was too small. It was like pre-drone, okay, it's pre-drone, now we have drones, right? Drones, and everybody can get a drone, everyone can fly a drone. And there's no FAA laws, too many yet, about drone warfare, drone flying. But BitPlane was pre all that. They put a video camera, tiny video camera on BitPlane and flew it over restricted airspace. It's too small to be detected by radar. So this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. And when we went down Boundary Street, me holding the tiny camera and David with the remote recording device, we were just looking at how ours worked and what interference there was and just the issues like that, how well we could actually make the whole apparatus work. And also just to have it, kind of the end of the film just kind of dissipates into a drift. It doesn't really have a conclusion.
Yes, Natalie was actually trying to make money selling kits. The Bureau, I've worked with the Bureau on a TV production in Australia when they were very young. They were only 20 years old, these girls. 3 of them were cyber feminists. But by the mid-90s, she was at Stanford. She wanted, at Stanford, everybody has to make stuff to sell, make stuff to sell, make stuff to sell. It's not like that at Berkeley, it's not like that at State. But everyone in Silicon Valley is pushed all the time to make a business and sell stuff. So
it's just a really amazing hack, this film. Which we're not going to show the whole bit, but she knows now, because the reason it's a hack is that it's undetectable by radar. There still are zones that are unmapped that you can get into as a hacker or as an artist.
yeah, anyone can make a drone, really, or buy one. You go to Walgreens and buy one. With a camera.
Right, now they all kind of.
Yeah, you can get a $20 drone from Walgreens easy with a high-def camera on it.
So because she's a scientist, she really annotated the data like 10 to 600 foot. Like ours, we had a 100-foot range on our tiny camera.
What made this good is the fact that it was in Silicon Valley, where you're not supposed to be. It was talking about the politics of Silicon Valley as a place of innovation.
And restricted airspace, like secrecy.
And restricted airspace, but it was also talking about it historically in terms of aerospace, miniaturization of computer components, and the fact that the military-industrial complex was linked to government taxpayer-funded research and development. And those subjects generally don't go together in common discussion in Silicon Valley because you're not supposed to talk about taxpayers in any context in Silicon Valley. Because only brilliant white geniuses create anything like Steve Jobs and people like that. The taxpayer is included in the equation.
So this is if you can find this film online.
Yeah, it's called BitPlane.
BitPlane. But anyway, again, so we were kind of in that mode of being pre-smart technology, pre-drone technology. We were just fiddling around with what we had. And again, to solve the problem, how do you separate the footage from the camera person who could have their camera taken? The police don't know. They're not getting the footage. They'll just take the camera.
This was transmitting to a receiver, and she was viewing what the camera could see with a head-mounted display.
Yeah.
So what should we do now?
So, are there costume comments?
like-
Yes. No, that's okay.
In terms of surveillance, is this about all visual stuff? Or are you also?
No, our workshop is mainly audio, actually.
Direction in the audio.
Okay, because have you read the recent Christopher Hedges article, The Truth Dig, where he puts together the opioid epidemic, the gambling addiction, and the iPhone addiction? All three. I highly recommend it.
Oh, very
So,
good. Thank you.
You know,
No, I'd say, I'd expand on that and say the addiction is really to non-empowering uses of formerly public, free and open, and, you know, it's similar to uses of taxpayer-funded distributed networks that have been so colonized and so rendered, muted, you know, by
corporate.
what Ken Walk calls the taxing of flows.
Yeah, he claims that was part of the issue was Trump's bankruptcy of his casino, because it was just all stroke by stroke information on these people working on their computer machines, so they were just processing all that information.
Yeah, interesting. Well, you know, I don't know if I'd include the iPhone right alongside narcotics. Certainly up there in a way, but I think that the suffering of someone who's desperately trying to get off, painkillers is a little bit different.
Well, I have to say, I actually didn't leave my iPhone here by accident over the weekend and just got it back today. And I did go through kind of a peculiar withdrawal because I kept looking for it. For one thing, it was like I really wanted it to just be attached to my arm permanently.
Yeah.
But I'm so dependent on it, it was insane.
It's an amazing article putting those things.
Yeah, I just read that. Thank you. That sounds great. So, are there any other comments? Anyone's
Yeah, I have a quick question. So pro drones or against drones? You both are. I'm just curious.
Oh, pro or against?
I'm pro. I'm
Pro,
pro.
okay.
Yeah, I'm pro cameras. I mean, I don't have a problem with cameras. Steve Mann's veillance argument there's nothing inherently wrong with cameras. It's just what it has to do with is the social relations that are there.
Again, yeah, it's like I don't understand what. Yeah, I mean, okay.
So
I don't have a problem with we can invent a drone, so that's legit, and we can invent them. But again, it's the old argument about militarism and technology. Everything we're talking about has come largely out of military research. So did the drone, and it's to like get someone to do something. People are doing incredibly creative things with drones, you know, and then people are doing really, really destructive things. So,
Well, that's why I asked the question.
well, I don't know if I'm
It's
pro or
always-
con. I'm
yeah,
sure
it's-
they're
it's
going to
always,
make air. They have to make
context.
air. I'm not pro drones.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, pro
Yeah.
destructive use
Yeah.
of drones.
Well, that's science.
Yeah.
Good or bad.
I know it sounds like a really
Yeah.
namby response. Well, some people do good things, some people do bad things, but at the same time, I don't know. I suspect they're going to have to make rules about them pretty
Yeah.
soon. People use them so much, and if they're going to deliver packages by drone.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because you can buy them in Walgreens now and everywhere else. Anybody can
there's so
have
many
you know.
cameras.
So
I mean,
it's
Has
really
anyone ever
interesting.
used one to play around with?
No.
Because look, you see it a lot in TV. I mean, they don't use for long aerial tracking shots. You don't have to hire a helicopter or an airplane.
It's really about who owns the networks. The drones aren't the problem, it's the networks that control them that are the issue.
And it's where the footage goes.
You know, if you look at a Predator drone, it's only a tiny fragment of a huge infrastructure of which it's a small, siege weapon on the end of a pyramid of infrastructure. There's a teenager in Nevada who pilots it, but there's an army of other people that govern the policy that says it should go in a certain place. There's all these things flying in the air that control where it goes. It has to be fueled, it has to be serviced, it has to be repaired, it has to be, there's all this infrastructure, and it's actually quite a cumbersome, clunky top-heavy, you know, like it's not a swift, elegant thing. It's a big, clunky semi-trailer of a thing.
It's a huge discussion actually, because it goes with like the development of GIS, geographic information systems. It goes with the kind of gridding of the entire surface of our globe.
It's not just
into a military grid, seriously, where pinpoint precision based on GPS, global positioning systems, can be prefigured on a screen. And I think it's Independence Day, the new one, where that system goes down, and my favorite scene, these huge Air Force jets start falling out of the sky. They're literally held in space by the automated computing system, and when that goes down, they just drop like flies, like boom, in the city, and it's just this most amazing scene, because you can actually, we don't have to go very far to imagine that happening, right? I mean, I don't.
Even the iPhone, I mean, if you talk about the iPhone, without the very complex, you know, deep state security state that is in place to govern the flows that Apple require. You know, there's also the unseen, you know,
manipulation of that state, and we all have IP addresses, and anyone can be found at any point in time.
Also, to carry a GPS in the damn thing.
You can put tinfoil around your phone and walk around with a Faraday cage in your pocket.
Slavoj Žižek always says, I don't really care if the NSA knows what I'm doing, because they can learn from me.
Right, and we can paint our face.
If they listen to Slavoj Žižek, they will become better citizens.
Who's this?
Slavoj Žižek. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think if some...
I think you did him really
if
well, by
some,
the way.
if some spotty geek in like...
I get it a lot. But
if
I
some-
live with CZ, actually.
If some hideous bloody Mormon in Virginia is spying on me, they're going to be a better person, because they're going to learn about gaming, and they're going to learn about, you know, culture jamming and all that. I don't really care. I'm probably improving the lives of some spies right now.
They're so distracting though.
You know.
How it always goes like this.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he's just a nervous twitch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's weird to get.
Yeah, just put them this way.
It's caused by
We're going to leave a little bit more PowerPoint, then we're going to go into more game.
Yeah.
We're just going to sort of a post-film discussion about surveillance for those who just came
So
in.
we should probably...
I'm going to check them. I want to talk about it. I can't find it. Okay, so we're changing gears just ever so slightly to talk, kind of recap on some terminology that's used. Let you trade information first. That's used in the kind of critique of what we're going to be using a little bit, the critique of surveillance culture. So I just wanted to read a few things, and then we're going to look at some things. I'm going to show you where all cameras are that are located in this right immediate zone, so you won't have to be hunting in the rain for a camera when we send you out into miserable weather to do your homework, to do your game. So surveillance. This is the dichotomy that we're looking at. Surveillance. Okay, 1, a watch kept over a person, group, etc., especially over a suspect, prisoner, or the like. The suspects are under police surveillance. Now, that is a kind of old definition of surveillance, based on things like Jeremy Bentham's panopticon, the warden in the prison, watching all the prisoners. It's obviously still in use. Prisoners, suspects, or the like are watched over by police. But this is again Steve Mann's little trajectories to try to create a little bit more nuanced definition of surveillance. So surveillance is also the instruction or recording of an activity by a person not participating in the activity. So in the example of the film where they walk into Sears and Steve had a film camera, he's putting those people under a kind of personal surveillance because he's interviewing them with the film camera, arguably, while they're at their job. They're not filming themselves. But meanwhile, the customers are in the store are being filmed by the corporate store security. So I'm just going to use these definitions for you. have the word terrorism, which is an interesting word, comes from French. Terrorism in the modern sense is defined by Merriam-Webster Dictionary and Wikipedia as the use of violence and intimidation in the pursuit of political aims. The modern use of this word differs somewhat from the original use. The words surveillance and terrorism both originated in the late 1700s and early 1800s from the Terror in France. During this reign of terror, 41,594 people were executed, many merely for their political views or associations. The word terrorism comes from the French word terrorisme, referring specifically to state terrorism in the form of violence practiced by the French government. I found this really interesting because we have a very reverse definition of this word, in a sense, referring to violence practiced by the French government against its own people. This terrorism was used as a weapon for political repression in a time of civil upheaval during the reign of terror. So we have grown accustomed to a concept of terrorism that seems to be coming from an outside enemy, the war on terror, but at the same time now, especially with Trump, I've argued like the ICE deportations are a form of terrorism being inflicted by the government. So Steve Mann's come up with this excellent little chart to look at the different ways in which looking and seeing can be talked about. To see in French, voir, to look at, regarder, to watch, veiller. Watching veillance or monitoring is veillance, actually the other part of surveillance. Watching over from above, surveillance. To oversee is surveyor, to watch from above, over from above, sur. So sur is from top down, under is sous, and undersight is watching from below, which is our DIY ability to take a camera and shoot back or survey back. Which really caught, you can see it in the faces of those people in Sears. They were very, very disturbed by the fact that they were on camera, even though they walk around the store and are on camera all the time. When you put certain people under camera or under recording, they get very nervous. Interesting. So this is part of Steve's work now, is veillance, and he's creating something called a veil. Well, he's using veilometers to actually show with light. This is actually. These are obviously bathroom sinks, which now have automated sensors in them, right? Every bathroom you go into, the toilet flushes with a sensor. They're all actually tiny, very crude cameras that pixelate, but pick up enough pixels to know when to turn on and off. How much of the camera, we really don't know. How much our privacy is being invaded, we're not quite sure. But you can actually measure that degree with light. So veillance is actually the amount of sight that something has in a space. And that's what we need to think about. That's the other half of surveillance, just the amount of sight that is giving off. And a veilometer can register that so that you can detect how much veillance is in a space.
The sink knows you are there.
The sink knows you're there. Right. We know you're there. You just stood up. Okay, so sousveillance, the recording of an activity from the perspective of a participant in the activity. So you're going to participate in surveilling the surveillors shortly. Sousveillance means to watch from below. The closest purely English word would be undersight, whereas surveillance generally refers to cameras affixed to property, i.e. real estate, on buildings mounted to inside or outside wall or ceiling, or to land mounted to lampposts, poles, and the like. Sousveillance refers to cameras worn by people, handheld cameras or wearable cameras. So we literally all have a camera. I mean, and everyone here has a smartphone or a cell phone. Even early cell phones had cameras that were not yet digital or smart, but were still more or less just simply cellular. Okay, so here we are. And I'm just going to point out, hey David, did you bring my pointer by any chance? That light pointer?
No, but I have a visual one.
So I made this whole presentation to help everyone start visualizing where we are in space and how you're going to find new cameras to work with when you're out there with your own camera. Because we're going to send you out to do the lens drift to do whatever you like to do in front of the camera of your choice. So here we are. This is Oscar Grant Plaza, renamed and reclaimed by the people of Oakland. Frank Ogawa, being a Japanese-American activist. But interesting use of language, reclaiming the space. And it's a triangular space, and we're here at Pro Arts. There's a camera right outside mounted on the pole. There's a camera across over here. So in this zone, you're going to find quite a few cameras. There's a couple on this side of this building that I believe the city of Oakland has put in, and I'll show you those in a minute. The one on the pole is a little CCTV camera, also for, looking at this alleyway. And it's in this direction. Along Broadway, there are quite a few mounted on the walls of these, along with these shops. And they're the white ones that kind of hook over. I'll show you a picture of them. There's one at both intersections, 14th Street and Broadway. And Broadway up here, the ones that monitor traffic. I'll give you a picture of those shortly. And then along the shop fronts here, there's quite a variety. One new ATM machine is mounted on the wall. There's a few of the similar types of the white hanger ones here. These are the zones that we're basically talking about. Oakland City Hall, quite interestingly, no evidence of any surveillance on the exterior of that building, nor any of these buildings right along here. We'll talk about that too. This little alleyway has quite a few. The back entrance, there is one camera in there monitoring the side door of the City Hall. And there's a parking garage on here. This is a parking garage, and there's some cameras in there. There's about, I would say, in my quick hour tour of this exact area, when I came out here to photograph, I probably found at least 45 cameras that are quite visible. So that's not, may not seem like it much right now at all. Okay, so here's your type of camera that appears. I'm just going to go through this because as citizens of the modern era, we need a little bit of vocabulary and knowledge of the different types of cameras which are lacing our urban environment. So these are ones that they use pretty much for traffic surveillance, for ticketing, traffic flow. There's a number of types of surveillance that we're looking at that may inspire you when you're out there. Counting cars, it's one of the counting. It's a form of surveillance. I would argue that it's kind of data surveillance. I mean, just how many cars pass through an intersection on a given day, who's breaking the law, etc., etc. Those cameras have a purpose. There are quite a few of them. I've just only noted on certain on certain traffic lights that they're pretty much installed in almost every light. You go out there and look. That one there, and this one here. These are two different intersections.
Question?
Yes.
Is there any way of knowing who has access where? I mean, there must be 2 or 3 agencies represented. Is that true?
Well, there you go. So that's the question. Who's on the other side of this? That would take a bit of research, I think, to figure that out. Going deeply into Oakland's policy on surveillance.
Several years ago, the Guardian newspaper in England published a map of Oakland's surveillance cameras.
Oh, really?
And you can look at that, and I think it's an interactive map.
You're an occupant?
Not,
it wasn't specifically about the Plaza, it was about Oakland.
Oh.
And also the anti-eviction mapping project in San Francisco, they published a map of this as well. So people are trying to do it. It's arguably very difficult to do because now, of course, everyone also carries cameras, so the lines are very blurred. But and spotting them can be sort of tricky, but I'll try to impression.
You could kind of surmise what it is from the kind of camera, in a way.
Right outside here, there's a little camera that looks a bit like this, but it's white. Right there on the post that looks up the alley. These are the city, Sarah Lockhart said the city installed these, and these are interesting because, again, they look like those little black blobs that Steve was pointing out in the ceiling of Sears. And indeed, this little globe conceals a camera, and they may have even 2 cameras in them that are looking, up the street that way and that way too. I think they're put there for crime. They're still there. They're very, very good. You'll see these more than any other type. On the side of the bookshop right up here along the plaza, just 2 little discreet little cameras looking up the street. Again, shop fronts because of crime, windows breaking, being broken rather, during a riot or something.
Graffiti.
Shoplifting.
They taught us graffiti.
Graffiti, right.
Oh, graffiti, of course.
That's when they installed them on.
So these are on Broadway. This down here is the intersection where I showed you that other camera above. You can see there's two right there, one looking that way and one looking this way. Same thing, I think this may be the same view on the other side, looking up that way towards Broadway. Those are little pesky little ones that sort of hang over there. The only camera that I could find in my travels, you may all be very much know more than I do about this and have done it yourselves already. You've been in protests in the Plaza, you've been looked around for surveillance cameras. The only one I could find was actively surveying Officer Grant Plaza. It's this one, which is mounted way high up on the roof of this building. This is the building right at the corner here, where the rotunda is, and then the building next to it. There's one of those little ones with enough range probably to cover the whole plaza. It's the only one that's obviously looking at the plaza. But we're talking about obvious surveillance, non-obvious surveillance through the course of this. So this is actually, I was curious at City Hall. I was so curious that I was like, how come there are no cameras right on the front of City Hall? I went in the day I was here, and there actually is a surveillance camera inside, just inside the door on the wall there. It's the only one I could find. It's not open today, but I'm going to know it's open. And on the right is that back entrance I mentioned along that alleyway. I'll revisit the map again. You've got a copy of the map in your packet. There's a little camera here. So that's to obviously guard against people breaking in, foul play, or crime, people taking down the alley, do naughty things, whatever.
Well, it used to be a latrine spot for the homeless when it was uncovered.
Right, so again, part of this probably is a response to homelessness by the city. Just if you're watched, you're not necessarily going to want to stick around. It makes people move along. This is on the parking garage, and it looks like a lamp, but I do not believe that is a lamp. My trained eye tells me that it's a very wide-ranging surveillance camera that may even rotate, at least have a couple of, looks like a lamp. This one is an interior, kind of on the ceiling, again like those little blobs, and that's across the street. And then I'll show you the location. These are in an alleyway. You can ask me about it too. So, and then inside, outside, so on the outside of these look like this, the corner of the store. On the inside, you can see they're mounted. It's not a very good photo, but there's one on the ceiling here. You look in, you can see them on the ceiling of lobbies, catching people coming in the front door or actively in the lobby. ATM machine, very discreet little guy on the wall there, small, watching the ATM. And on this is a little tiny one that's more like one of those TV-looking cameras there, watching this shop front. That's right along here next to the bookshop, the ATM, and the cafe. Helping you to try to understand how to see them and find them if you haven't ever tried to do this before. They are kind of sneak up on you that they're there. Another type of device which is prevalent in this neighborhood, and I think is in these lobbies that kind of go in where the door is recessed. And this is still outside, but there's no door here. The actual door of the building being back there, but it's like a little lobby. These are people counters, sensors that could be motion sensors or people counters, which are sold for counting the number of people that go in and out of the building every day. The old electric eye from the 50s, which helped to open doors. When you pass through it, it sensed a physical presence so the doors would open. Also counted people entering malls and entering public buildings. So they may be also just motion sensors that get picked up somewhere on the other side of this by security. We were talking mostly here, though, about the technology of CCTV, so closed circuit, somewhere there's a bank of monitors and someone is recording or monitoring. How long those tapes are kept and who has control of them is another issue. These are the guiding devices that I was talking about, so you're going to want to just kind of mentally note these. When you go out, you're going to be looking for different things that look like this. You can see the camera underneath the dark glass. These are really, this is like an interior model, exterior model. Small camera like one mounted on the post up there. All of these are within like 5 minutes, the ones I'm showing you of this space. You need to go out and find a camera. These are the like door counters, the people counters in those lobbies. And that one is maybe mounted on the exterior of the cafe. These are more the traffic light types. Big, they're big. Can't miss them, they look like big eagles or something sitting up there. So back to the map, we're here. There's all whole bunch along here, hanging on the side of the buildings up here. This is that alleyway where on the top of the parking lot, there's the one that looks like a lamp. And then there's a few in here and some entrances to the buildings along there. I couldn't actively find, and I'm very suspicious of this, any in the Commons, which is called the Commons, I guess, I read, this green area. I could not find a single thing that I could declare was a surveillance camera. However, audio devices can look like LED lights. I find it very hard to believe that there's nothing in that entire plaza, especially because of occupied other events. It doesn't pick up some kind of movement, some counting, some audio, some, it's just too good to be true.
We concluded from that there were probably either concealed or behind glass cameras in the building.
Yeah, so in this building here, sorry.
Yeah, so they're almost certainly embedded into the
very, 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 like, these buildings over here that are all mirrored. I mean, it would be so easy. I'm assuming there's probably some kind of long-range camera maybe up in City Hall in a window, because or on the roof. Or in these buildings here, which have this really mirror facade. I mean, anything can be behind them. And they have a direct look above the trees onto the plaza. I just can't, who's with me on that? Like, it's too used for protests for them not to have some kind of recording.
There are light posts out there though, like the kiosks.
Yeah.
Fences. I mean, like.
Right, that's where I would think there's going to be some audio going on there. Something. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of like a preamble to landscape.
extra credit being a company if you can locate the obvious cameras.
Right, if you can find them.
Creating an app.
I'm interested in that.
So should we describe that script?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can we turn on some lights, please?
Yeah.
Well, I have one question.
Yeah.
Have you looked at the technology of the cameras themselves very much? Because I know there's a fisheye camera. Would that be efficient at all or not? Do you know?
A little bit, yeah. I've got a collection of cameras at my house, and I like to look at them. They don't only sense light, some of them. They sense infrared, they sense...
So, and then, so like these, these rotate with motion, some of them, they can do just about anything you can conceive of as a form of surveillance.
These are like UV.
And some of them can move with motion, so they direct when they sense motion.
Sorry, not infrared, infrared light. So they can see at night, basically. They flood the area.
And that's becoming much more common, like the new technology around infrared is used a lot. Believe it or not, with that whole era of data collection and everything being about the data and reading the city through data. Of course, capitalism is really exploiting this. So the department stores use infrared technology. And does anyone know why, or has anyone ever come across it? So you have to take a guess how they would use it. They do put it in the ceilings. No, I'm not saying every department store. They do have it to put up there. It can detect people around displays, how many people visit certain displays. That's why I include people counting, because it's such a function of capitalism to know the quantity of something.
Yeah, I mean, I know this doesn't quite fit, but what about credit cards as being sort of a tool of surveillance, because they leave such an explicit trail.
Right, well, yes, and that's become more part of this whole tracking of you. Yes, they are definitely a trail. And in addition, we're not talking yet about facial recognition and things like that.
Or RFID tags generally, like clipper cards and zip cards and anything with an RFID tag in it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so this is called lens drift. This is going to be our activity today. The QR code there is our main emblem. I mean, QR codes are kind of ugly, but they're beautiful and ugly at the same time. They have their own aesthetic, let's put it that way. So, what we're going to do is basically we go out into the plaza. Your job is to form small teams of 1 or 2. identify a single camera, note its location on the map or by address. You have a map with your handouts, or find one of your own. So if you can't see one on the map we provided, identify one, by yourself. Then photograph the camera with your phone. Take a picture of it, just like Marty did for the PowerPoint just now. Take one or two other photos at the location, and what I do with my students is when they take pictures of things that are used later in locative media, is they get a close-up of the thing, and then another shot of it in, so you see it close up, if you can get a close-up, and then another shot showing it in situ, in location. So if you've got a nice, beautiful shot of the camera, get another one a bit wider, so you can see what's on either side of it. So we get a sense of where it is geographically.
I'm noted on your map, so in the booklet you have a map and you can put down and mark where you're at.
Yeah, so X marks the spot on your map, so as you go out, put an X on your paper map as well. And then record 20 seconds of audio on your phone about being in that place. Depending on which phone you have, any audio recording software will do. I think for the iPhone, iRig recorder is not bad. I mean, I like iPhone multimedia tools. iRig recorder is not bad, but any audio recording tool will do. It only wants to be about 20 seconds of you talking into the phone. And it wants to be an anecdote or a story.
Or just a response, a rant, whatever you want to do.
A rant could be a political manifesto.
Could be something more playful. You're welcome to whatever, however you choose to, you're going to go out and just kind of relate to.
Our aim is to associate that specific place of that camera with a piece of audio.
Do any of these surveillance cameras pick up audio as well?
Say again?
The surveillance cameras that you showed us in the briefing, do those pick up audio as well?
I don't know.
I don't know. Probably not. I mean, again, it's expense, like the city.
I don't know anything about the cameras.
Right.
All we know is that they're there, and then we don't know who owns them or what they record or anything.
Yeah, I like black boxes, yeah.
Yeah, we simply know that they're placed and that they are distributed around the plaza.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know anything about who's behind it.
Or which ones go to where.
We simply use them as focal points for our game activity.
Right. I mean, I can make an educated guess that the ones that are installed by the city, somehow the city is recording data and using against crime prevention, but,
In terms of the game of war, they serve as what the board might call arsenals, in that they are concentrations of communicative power for the
and communication is
for the interests of the city and the business class. Okay. Whether or not you identify with the police, the city, and the business class would determine your reaction to the efficacy of those cameras.
So we've gotten a lot of supplies out, and if you want to take extra paper, if you are a writer, we've got clipboards, you can take pens and markers, write something, hold it up.
Yeah, you can do a surveillance camera players if you want, but the key result from the drift exercise are photographs and an audio recording.
Okay. So everyone has a smartphone or some device that can record audio?
Well, the function let them do that.
That's okay.
You can go out with a team. Put you in a team.
That's okay. I don't want to be recorded. Thanks.
Okay.
So when you've got your photographs and your audio clip, email them to me, and I'll be back here with the laptop at the command center here at ProArts. And then I will upload them to archive.org. I've got an account there. I can show you how to get an account at archive.org. It's an awesome resource set up by Bruce and Carl. It's like a Google, but for people that don't know.
Public Commons?
It's a really great, it's like a Creative Commons Google. And then come back here. So do all that and come back here after emailing it to me.
Right, so what time is it now? So I would take about 20 minutes to do this.
Yeah.
I don't think you should hang out in the rain much longer. I would like, if anyone's interested in working in a team, that's great. It would help probably to facilitate the photo shoot and even the audio recording. If you want to work by yourself, that's fine. If you want to take materials with you, that's fine.
Yeah.
Clipboard, you put your thing on, take some markers, however, if you'd like. And then, so if you want to sort of think about it now for like 5 minutes, and then go out and come back by, say, 3 o'clock.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's part one. So you go out and get the content, and then you email it to me, and then you come back. Part two is we will then generate a QR code that, when scanned, results in an audio file. Right? So whoever goes up to your little QR code in the Plaza and scans it with their phone will hear sound.
And hear what you said.
And hear what you said when you recorded it at that spot. So they'll go, I was here 5 years ago during the big confrontation, blah, 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 whatever you say. And therefore, you will have associated a geographic place with an anecdote about that place. It's very personal.
You're going to post the QR code at that location?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to come back here and make the QR codes and
We'll
print
make the
them out.
QR codes, we'll print them out in there, and then we'll give you the QR code, and if you want, there's no obligation, you can go back out and affix them somewhere on the floor or on the walls in the Plaza. It's up to you where, but ideally there would be adjacent to the camera, because hopefully your comments will relate in some way to the camera or to being seen or in some way. Ideally, you would make a connection to the fact that it's near a camera. You might make a comment about the camera. There's no obligation there. But I think it'd be nice if there could be some reference made to the camera.
Yeah, we're talking about surveillance, so so that's part of what we're asking you to do, is to relate to the camera and make comments about it, or about surveillance in general, or about the Plaza surveillance. It's something that you know, or you can be more playful. But when someone comes along and scans that code, they will get what you said.
Right, and then after you've done that, and the Plaza is thus symbolically occupied, you come back here again. This is your second return back here, and then I will demonstrate Open Maps, which is the open source alternative to Google Maps, and I can show you how to annotate this map I've made this already. It's Oscar Grand Plaza, and you can put these like place marks. You know how Google Maps have place marks? And I put a dummy example in there just for the purposes of demonstration. And here is a link to a sound at archive.org. It just happens to be one of my songs. Maybe you want to write a song.
Maybe you better sing in front of the camera, right?
So you can this whole kind of workflow is all about looking at space and associating media with space, and using these media, open source media, to insert yourself both physically and in terms of mediated sound and vision into that space. It's also possible to take the photographs and the QR code and put them on archive.org and link them all together onto these place marks. And so the place mark gives you you can put the link to the QR code, the pictures, and the sound all in one place mark. And so all you need to do is basically give someone the link to the map. And the map could be everything.
So this will form a documentary kind of record of also what we did today in the workshop, that we hope to come out of this with an interactive map, which we will send to you, so you also have access to the link and the record of what you all performed and created today, which is essentially also kind of a deconstruction of the power relationships of surveillance on the Plaza, because you're essentially surveillers surveilling back on the presence of a hidden, unseen power generated on that Plaza.
I've done exercises like this before with students at places like CCA, and this is using Google Maps, but each of these place marks represents a QR code associated with a different part of the campus at CCA. So that one, when scanned, tells you about this artwork. This one, when scanned, tells you about this. And it's basically a guided tour. And each of the QR codes is about a different thing. And narrative about what happened once in this dormitory, a narrative about what happened along this alleyway. So you can see how psychogeography works here, you know, a drift around a region coupled with comments about what happened in that region. So,
Or, yeah, and as a way of, it's like it's locative media in the sense of introducing personal history or alternative history to a location and, you know, another reading or text on that location.
right. And, yeah, it's a lot of fun to do this. So that's it. That's our lens drift activity. And then, time allowing, I will then take the effort to couple what we've done in lens drift to the game of war.
Yeah, we'll play a little bit of the game.
And I'll explain the game of war. And then I thought if there's time we could design a game based on our experiences with our materials here for Ogawa Plaza or for Oscar Grant Plaza here at ProArts. And, you know, we could workshop some games, original games.
We'll have time for that.
Okay. So the first step is to go out into the plaza with your handouts and get some photographs, sounds, and photographs.
Is everyone clear what we're to do? Okay.
All right. So